Good afternoon. My name is Bo Lauder, and I am the head of Friends Seminary and had the true good fortune to know and learn from Ann for almost 25 years. On behalf of the Sullivan family, I welcome you to our campus and to the 15th Street Meeting House to remember and celebrate the life and legacy of the amazing Ann Sullivan. In the manner of friends, could we please join together in a moment of silence? Ann Sullivan spent 27 years of her storied career here at Friends, becoming and remaining for the rest of her life an iconic member of the Friends community. During these years, she served in more positions than any other person anyone can remember. College counselor, director of development, director of admissions, head of the English department, most recently as a member of our board of trustees, but most importantly, as a teacher of English. In addition to her adored family and many friends, she is survived by legions of students who remain devoted to her and are still fixated on the magical and joyful teaching they experienced in her classroom. Including board service, Ann was officially associated with Friends for 36 years. And not to forget her two sons, Andrew and David, of whom she was incredibly proud, are alumni of the school and shared these, as our alma mater says, classic halls and ancient walls with their mother while they were students. So it is fitting that we are here today in this meeting house, the very heart of our school community, to remember Ann. In her many roles at our school over these many years, she spent countless hours in this space, and it remained a deeply important marker in the geography of her life and career. As we will hear, Ann's life and career spanned well beyond Friends Seminary and included service at 3 additional schools, several distinguished headships, an educational consultancy, and of course, living an adventurous and loving life with Dick, her sons, and grandchildren. It is an honor for us to host Ann's memorial. I think the size of today's gathering illustrates just how important Ann Finneran Sullivan was to so many people. So let us begin this celebration of life, so bright, busy, and full of light and love. Sister Margaret.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sister Margaret. I'm one of the sisters of the Holy Child Jesus. I'm from Nigeria, but presently I'm in Philadelphia at Bremer. With a heart full of love and gratitude, I stand before you today, representing all the sisters of the Holy Child Jesus whose lives Ann touched very well. She was a dear friend, cherished and admired by all, especially during her time at the School of the Holy Child Jesus in Rye, New York, from 1999 to 2013 and beyond. Many of us became lifelong friends with Ann, and it is with a heart broken by love that I remember my dear friend today. Ann's love for the sisters was very deep and unwavering. She held us close in her heart. And in turn, we were blessed by her friendship, her wisdom, and her vibrant spirit. She gave us as much love as she received. And her connection to our community was one of mutual love and respect. She was full of affection, and she had a shared mission with our society. I first met Ann many years ago in Lagos, Nigeria. I met Ann in Nigeria before I even came for studies in the US, when she visited with her son, Andrew, whom we fondly called Kofi. The name we know Andrew in our society is Kofi, not Andrew. Kofi is a Ghanaian name, meaning born on Friday. I guess you were born on Friday. So from the very first moment, Ann's warmth and kindness and gentle spirit left an indelible mark on me as a person. And since then, we've been friends. She had a unique way to make everyone around her feel seen, loved, and valued. Ann laughed often. Her infectious laughter could light up any room. It was a sound that brought joy and warmth to all who were fortunate enough to hear it. I'm sorry. Over the years, Ann became a constant presence in my life and a great source of support. She was always there when I needed someone to listen. When I was unwell, she would always come around. And that was how I met Erica the first time. When I was unwell, sometimes in Rye, I had a knee surgery. She was always there with Andrew, with Erica, and that was how I met her family. I was telling David today that the kids are also grown because I met them when they were like kids, like little, or simply when I needed a kind word. Her selfless care, unwavering love, and ability to show up for others were gifts that I will always and forever cherish. Though our times together was brief, the memories we shared will remain in my heart forever. I was telling Dick today that at Christmas or Easter or any of the occasions, I was always looking forward to Ann's beautiful family card. So this Christmas, I didn't get one. Then I took the old one and I placed it on my stuff. Then I sent a card to Dick. I was telling him, "Did you get my Christmas card?" So he said, "Maybe it came, but I really don't know," which I don't blame him because today made it like so real for me that Ann is actually gone. I will always treasure the moment we spent together, particularly when we gathered in New York for a meal with Gabby McCree and Kathy Gibbons. They are seated here in the crowd. That was in September, 21st September of 2023. I didn't know that was the last time I was going to see her. We took photos and then we walked across the street. We went to one Italian restaurant, I can't call the name. She's very fond of that restaurant and she said we must go there. Exactly. So we went to that, and everybody in the restaurant, at the restaurant sort of they knew Ann. They were like giving us special treatment because of Ann. And I said to her, "Is this your family restaurant?" Ann's presence brought light and joy into my life in words cannot fully express. And her absence, sincerely, has left a void that cannot be filled. I will carry her spirit with me always, and the love she gave will continue to guide me. May Ann soul rest in peace. And may the love she shared with all of us, and I'm sure many of us encountered her too, continue to illuminate the lives of all who were blessed to know her. I would also like to share a greeting from Sister Cecilia Nya. She's one of the sisters of the Holy Child Jesus, she's in South Sudan right now, and she wished she was here. She served as a province leader in the African province of the Society of the Holy Child Jesus during Ann's tenure at the School of the Holy Child in Rye. Ann distinguished herself among the heads of Holy Child schools in her vision and commitment to institutionalize a global perspective. Ann didn't just talk about change. Like our foundress, the foundress of the Society of the Holy Child Jesus, Cornelia Connelly, our motto is called Action, Not Words. Ann was a woman of action. When she wants to do something, she goes for it and she gets it done. I was sharing with her that if Ann was here, the hall would have been organized long time ago. So Ann encouraged and supported students, faculty, and families traveling to Ghana and Nigeria. And that was how I met Gabby. Gabby came to Nigeria with her daughter through that program. And I was head of a school in Nigeria, and that was how we met, and we became lifelong friends too. More than that, Ann herself chose to travel to West Africa. And that was how we met in Lagos with Andrew, Kofi. Deeply embodying her belief in global solidarity. Through her lasting impact on the Holy Child community, shaping the lives of all who crossed her path. Farewell, Ann, until we meet again. As we bid you farewell on your journey to eternity, we pray that you may be blessed with the next life, as we were blessed by your presence in this life. And knowing you has been a privilege, and I'm happy to share life with you. And your spirit will remain forever vivid in our hearts and memories. Rest on, dear friend, in heavenly peace. And to Dick, David, and Andrew, and your beautiful families, we stand with you in this time of sorrow. May you feel your mother's love wrapped around you. They are always there. I lost my mom 30 years ago, but I always feel her presence. They are always there comforting and strengthening you as you face the days ahead without her physical presence. You are not alone, and I hope the friendship we shared while she was here will continue. And we will continue to be friends with you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
First, thank you all for being here. This is just amazing, amazing turnout. No surprise, of course. A few pointed thank yous. Bob Rosen for his help with music. Bella Meyer, who did these beautiful flower arrangements. Andreas Wagner, who's doing the video work. It's been amazing. Aaron Hughes and the 15th Street meeting has allowed us to use this space. Very grateful for that. Rebecca Holmes, wherever you are, Rebecca, has been an incredible partner in pulling this all off. Last and most important, Bo. Bo, in the first days of school this past fall, set everything aside to help rally friends, colleagues to Mom, and checked in all the time, activated the school's resources for us. and who's been guiding us here today. Obviously, thank you. Thank you. I'm Andrew Sullivan, Ann's son, as many of you will know. So as such, I think it's fair for me to suggest what she might say were she here. I think she'd look out at the crowd and she'd start by saying, "I am verklempt." She'd say that because it would be true, she'd be deeply moved, but she'd say it also because she loved words, and she loved that word especially. She loved saying it, she loved using it in the right setting. Above all, Mom would say verklempt because at her core, she was a teacher. So she'd say that funny word and she'd give you a look that said, if you want to know the origin or where that comes from, come talk to me after and I'll tell you what it's about. Mom might also say, "I'm so happy to see you here at our table." Forgive me for imagining a very large table here. This is a line many of you have probably heard her say. This was about the joy she took in being with others, especially over a good meal. And she might add about that meal, "I have to say, this is very good." And that's because Mom was not shy about complimenting her own cooking. And that's a good lesson for all of us. Part of what made Ann Sullivan so special were her contrasts. For example, she loved writers, she loved books. She filled her homes with books, as many of you know. She could immerse herself in reading all day. One rainy summer in the 70s, pre-kids, she read a book a day, so she claimed. She read so much in grad school that she got an eye twitch. She told us that too. Few things brought her joy in life like a good book. But Ann Sullivan was always in motion. There was nothing better for her than a busy day, a vigorous day. She filled her life with those days. Mom's dear friend and Friends Seminary colleague, Paul Supton, some of you may know, once said, he's a very funny person, this is a warning of sorts. Paul said that visiting Mom and Dad in Maine at our family summer place on Cranberry was like a stay at the Olympic Village. Paul's point was that you better be ready to rise with the sun, to ride a bike everywhere, not just any bike, but a 60s 3-speed, to play tennis, a little more competitive than you expect, to hike in Acadia National Park, the steeper the hike, the better, to participate in nightly cocktail parties. You thought you were here to relax? To receive a dinner party seat assignment from Mom, very directly, a seat you would not have chosen, but you end up loving nonetheless, to do dishes by hand, to close the evening with a walk under the stars, and finally to sleep in an antique bed on a mattress that came with the house. Not everybody got Paul's warning, but even those who did kept coming back. Continuing with the contrasts, at School of the Holy Child, Mom's colleagues called her the happy hurricane. This is the prime of her career. She was turning that school around by force of her own positivity. Full of ideas, relentlessly warm. She loved the daily routine of welcoming students into school, giving out hugs, chatting with parents. But she could be tough, too. Formidable is the word that a colleague wrote in a letter after her death. For example, Mom was periodically recruited for heads of schools jobs, including by one well-known Brooklyn independent school. Over the course of that interview process, she was asked by a board member in a group setting, as a Catholic, and since you've only been head of a Catholic school, do you think you're up for the challenge of running our school? Mom's answer went something like this: schools are schools, each is unique, each has its challenges. And on the Catholic point, I think John Kennedy answered that in 1960. Now, I can just about guarantee this person did not mean to suggest Mom would be answering to the Vatican. But I also know that that answer has got to be the line that every mid-century born, Kennedy-loving Catholic girl dreams of delivering at a moment of disrespect. So mom saw her opening and she nailed it. Parents in the room know it's hard to be objective about one's children. Our kids are perfect in our eyes. Now, kids, on the other hand, tend to see their parents' flaws, perhaps with greater clarity than is fair. But for David and me, it was different. Mom may not have been perfect, but she was close. In an email after her death, her dear friend Dan Leaf wrote, "I don't think she made mistakes. Everyone I talked to tells me what she did for them. There were no flaws." David and I had the unusual experience of watching our mother in her place of work every day. Only in retrospect do I understand that what we witnessed to be something close to perfection, Ann Sullivan's leadership. When someone at Friends needed advice about something important, deeply important, they went to Ann Sullivan, a student with a crisis at home who hadn't sent in a college application, a parent with a kid failing an important class, a teacher with sudden doubts about his or her career choice, an administrator deciding on whether to stay at Friends or leave. They went to Ann Sullivan. So yes, mom was warm, friendly, charismatic, but what I remember most vividly are the serious moments, the moments when she shifted someone's trajectory in life for the better. It's appropriate to celebrate her life here at Friends, as Bo said. Appropriate because this is a homecoming for her, and not just for the obvious and comforting reason that she spent so many hours here in this beautiful plain space and sat on these benches, but because the school was formative for her as a professional, as a mother, and as a human being. Ann Sullivan embodied Friends Seminary values. What are those values? I'm going to take a run at this. A belief in the power of education, a commitment to building and nurturing community of all kinds, personal, professional, global, as Sister Margaret said, and above all else, a commitment to helping others. And nothing reflects that last commitment, helping others, like her everlasting love of her students. To have been mom's student was to be forever luminous. There were very few family dinner conversations that didn't involve an anecdote about mom's students and their exploits. Our most important decades-running family joke is how mom ran into former students everywhere. Places high and low, from Machu Picchu to Penn Station, and everywhere in between. Restaurants, movie theaters, the dentist, airports, farmers markets, traffic lights, subway platforms, ferry boats. Inevitably, mom would turn to us after these run-ins with a quip. Brilliant as ever. Still a prince of a guy. A bit more specific. Published last year in The Atlantic. A perfect score in the SAT. Picked up Mandarin in her 40s. What a linguist. I'll close where I started, with mom's love of words. The word that mom chose to describe her cancer ordeal was resolute. She was adamant about this. She used it over and over again in emails, texts. Many of you may have seen this. That word evokes for me, as I know it did for her, sea adventures, especially those of the 19th century. Stories by Herman Melville and Joseph Conrad, writers she studied and taught. At the climax of Conrad's story, Typhoon, a ship is briefly in the calm of a terrible storm. As the barometer drops and the wind picks back up, the ship's captain, Captain McWhirr, a man who is both inscrutable and steady, a leader whose resolve inspires everyone around him, tells a crew member, facing it, always facing it. That's the way to get through, face it. That's enough for anyone. Resolute. I believe mom chose that powerful word because it reflected not just her approach to cancer, but something bigger. Something that she observed over her life, something that Conrad was pointing to as well. The capacity, unique to humans, but available to all of us, to face life's challenges with calm determination. So if Mom were here, I believe she would ask us to reflect on that word, resolute, and embrace that spirit today and in the future. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My husband Dan and I moved onto our apartment on West 84th Street in July 1973. We met Ann and Dick, who were living across the street 3 days later. Mrs. Hohenstein, the dry cleaner on our corner, told Ann that she had to meet, quote, that nice young couple we were once, whom just moved in down the block. Their moving van caught fire. They had nothing left except their little dog and had been sitting on their front porch for days. They lost everything. Well, Ann brought us pillows and blankets. She fed us and she treated us like family. Later, as Dan remembers, I'm not quite sure, Ann came by with Dick, who was carrying a bottle of wine and 4 glasses, and we toasted. Little did we know we were initiating a 50-year friendship. That spring, we walked across the street to celebrate Dick's 30th birthday. We walked our dogs together. Samantha and Albert, West Island Terrier and Bulldog, at all hours, all over and all around Central Park. And we began lifelong conversations. We talked about everything from work to hope for pregnancies to childbirth. First, it was just the 4 of us with our dogs. Then we were 6, and a few years later, we were 8. Also, importantly for me, Ann realized her English department at Friends Seminary needed another teacher on the team, and Ann made it happen. We grew together and we learned from each other. It's wonderful and so appropriate that this service is taking place in the Friends Seminary meeting house. This was always a special place for Ann. The faculty, the students, the philosophy. I'll never forget Ann's whispered word during a faculty meeting as I was just raising my hand to ask for a vote. Shh, consensus. It was because of Ann and Dick that we started visiting the Cranberry Isles in 1974. We soon shared their love of those tiny Maine islands. We bought our house on Little Cranberry, and for some reason we bought the Islesford Dock restaurant. We never found an official job for Ann, who of course knew everyone who walked through the doors, but we did let Dick bartend one Sunday brunch, and all survived. And then David and Andrew persevered through sun and fog to become the famous Brunch Brothers. And Ann, of course, did become the teaching pro at Wimblebury on the Big Island. And the conversations flowed. Dan and I know our most exciting travel adventures were shared with Ann and Dick. Hiking into the Grand Canyon, across Patagonia, up to Machu Picchu, hiding behind narrow trees to avoid rhinos in South Africa. And in England, riding the sea tractor to Burr Island with all our boys to celebrate New Year's. We laughed and wandered and were open to every experience. About 2 weeks ago, the wife of a mutual student at Friends received a Presidential Citizens Medal. I've got to call Ann, I thought. But then Ann, who read everything, and usually very early in the morning, would already have sent me the article from the New York Times. She loved words and ideas and books, piles of books. So much sharing of joy and some sadness over these 50 years. Ann and Dick are a formidable team. They supported each other, were honest with each other, and together made it a privilege to spend time with them, all of us. Friends, family, colleagues, students of Ann are truly in consensus. It may be difficult to believe, but Ann wouldn't just remember your names and where you met and why. She would be interested in knowing how you are and what you're doing now. She listened, was truthful, cared about every person she met. She was the ultimate networker. She was always there when you needed something. We can all hear Ann say, I might know the right person, or, well, here's what you might do. She cared. She was eternally positive, and that smile. Perhaps that's what friendship is, a consensus between two people. So much laughter, so much joy. Dick, David, and Adi, Andrew and Erica, and Anna, Felix, and Xavier. Ann gained such pleasure from you and loved you all so much. Hold on to the sound of her voice and the memories, her smile when she saw you, and retell those stories. Savor the time spent with her. A friend of all of ours from the Cranberries, Ashley Bryan, often referenced just the right poem for the moment. This one by Langston Hughes was one I heard him offer several times. I love my friend. He went away from me. There's nothing more to say. The poem ends soft as it began. I love my friend.
It feels like being home in this meeting house and at Friends Seminary, a place that embodies all that we love about life, education, and humanity, and a place that was so dear to Ann. I'm honored to say a few words to celebrate the life of our beloved Ann Sullivan. And I say our because she belongs to all of us and was such an intricate part of our lives. She certainly was and continues to be such a special part of my life, both personally and professionally. Ann, Dick, David, and Andrew are family to my wife, Anitra, and our 3 kids. And I speak for my wife, Anitra, as well, because we loved Ann so much, and we just adored and loved the Sullivan family, a bond that still continues and that goes back decades. And truth be told, I need to also let you all know that Ann Sullivan kicked me out of Friends Seminary after 4 years of working here. She sat me down one day and told me, despite my protest, that it was time for me to go. I will pause there because there's more to that story, and it speaks volumes of the impact she has had on my life for the past 4 decades. I began my career in education right here in these halls of Friends Seminary. I still considered it to be the greatest gift that I was hired in the admission office here because I got to work so closely with Ann on a daily basis. Ann mentored me. I was mentored by Ann and incredible women, particularly such as Joyce McCrae, then head of Friends, Ellen Stein, the then vice principal, Ellen Edwards, then the college placement director, and Hope Franz Lagore, our colleague in admissions, just to mention a few. I was a year out of college and very green, and Ann Sullivan took me in from day one. I vividly remember telling my mom back in Ohio that I thought I had hit the jackpot in working with Ann, that she was wise, funny, caring, and showed interest in me as a person from the very beginning. Ann knew I was in New York City without family and pretty much friends at the time, and I had moved here from Cleveland, Ohio, to work at Friends. And she was always making sure that I was taken care of, that I was eating well, that I was making friends, that I knew how to navigate the city. She taught me everything. I learned everything from her, from how to be professional, how to love your work, the importance of teamwork, how to navigate difficult conversations, how to have fun on the job, and just how to be committed and a dedicated educator and human being. She coached me She helped to settle my nerves when I was about to propose to Anitra. Years later, as both Ann and Dick attended our wedding, Ann said to me, "You did well. We're happy for you." And I just remember how happy that made me feel. The student getting praise from their favorite teacher and human. My most prized moments in those years we worked together in the late 80s were just listening to her, soaking up her wisdom. She modeled all these traits for all of us who had the honor and pleasure to work with her and to be mentored by her. And her mentorship and friendship went beyond the walls of friends. She frequently invited Anitra and me to their Brooklyn home. It became a second home for Sunday brunches, weekend meals, for annual Christmas tree decorating gatherings. I remember David and Andrew, they were little guys, both still in the lower school here at the time, and we just had the best of times with them, as they too just invited us into their lives and were gracious with sharing their parents with us. Their home, food, and laughter extended through the years from Brooklyn to Cranberry Island in Maine, to the house on the campus of Holy Child, and back in the city. Andrew reminded me recently that during one of those meals in Brooklyn, about a decade after I left Friends, Anitra and I happily exclaimed to the Sullivans, "We're pregnant." And I also recall about that story how happy Ann was for us. She had comforted me during the devastation of a miscarriage we had earlier, and she knew the difficulties that we had at conceiving at the time. That was Ann. She was there during the worst of times and the best of times, including the death of my own father. I just always turned to her, and there were so many times without even asking her, she knew I needed her wisdom, that she would beat me to that call. She was so present in my life, so tapped in, and I know so many of you can relate to this. I mentioned how those gatherings were always filled with such laughter. Ann would just crack you up with laughter, like the time she told us her trick to getting through a long drive to Maine when she may have been tired. She would say that she would just alternate resting each eye, that she would close one while the other took over and vice versa. She was so adamant about it too that there's hardly a long drive that we do to this day when Anitra and now my own kids won't reference that heroic act. It remains legendary. She always had this uncanny ability to just say the right things and offer such nuggets of advice, which brings me back to the day she told me it was time for me to leave Friends. I had no intention of leaving this place. I loved it here. But it was Ann who said to me that I needed to go back to school to pursue a degree, a master's degree, that it would give me a different perspective on education and one she felt that I needed. I didn't want to listen to her, but I also knew that she cared deeply and must have been saying this out of her love and concern for me and for my career. She saw the runway when I did not, and she used her powers of persuasion to get me to fly that plane to graduate school. That decision single-handedly changed my life, my work life, my career, my trajectory. It was a game changer, and she knew it. And it was such a selfless act on her part because it meant that she would have to conduct a search for my replacement, go through all applications. She could have easily said to me, "Great, you want to stay? I'm happy for you. Let's keep doing this work together." And she knew I would have never left if she said that. But that is the true meaning of good friendship, when that real friend tells you things that you might not necessarily want to hear. That was Ann Sullivan for me. And over the past 40 years, I have not made a professional move or made a huge decision without consulting her, without seeking her guidance and counsel. And she was always willing to give me that time and straight shooter advice. I can't even begin to tell you all how much of a light she is in my life and will continue to be. I'm a better human being, a better educator, a better teacher, and a better parent because of Ann. She meant everything to me, and she still does. Outside of my parents and Anitra, Ann Sullivan has had the most impact on my life, both professionally and personally, than anyone. She gave me an incredible toolbox of life that I carry with me every day. What a gift you left for me, dear friend. I will close with a few words about Ann's family. As I said, she belonged to us, but they were her heart and soul. Our conversations over the years were always about her family, about the great updates about David and Andrew and how proud she and Dick were of them. how she adored their spouses, Adi and Erica, and the grandkids, Anna, Felix, Xavier, how that she just relished the times that they would all get together about their growing families, about their own siblings and their nieces and nephews. David and Andrew, you know she adored you. You were the greatest things that ever happened to your parents. They're masterpieces. Anne loved fearlessly and fearlessly. Please know how proud she was of you. She loved that your lives and careers were about service to others because that is what her life was all about. Our conversations always began with updates on the Sullivans and all of you. And Dick, I just love how you and Anne would call each other by your full names. In my conversations on text with them, Anne would say, Dick Sullivan is hunkered down, sweating over the Knick game. And Dick would say, Ann Sullivan is putting together a dinner gathering for you and some friends, so she wants to make sure that you're going to be there. Dick and Ann, like the best of combinations, peanut butter and jelly, cookies and milk, mac and cheese. Theirs is a love story for the ages. You modeled for us how to love and how to have longevity together, how to have fun together, how to be present for each other, how to love on each other and on your families in sickness and in health. It was joyful to be with both of you and to see that love emanating from you. Thank you for sharing that 56-year bond with all of us. Today we celebrate Anne's life, which in turn, your life together, and all of the magic that you created. Your love story will never end. I love you, Anne. I love your family, our family. Thank you to the Sullivans. I will be forever grateful. Thank you.
I'm David, I'm the firstborn. Nice to see you. I was saying to the folks up front as I was greeting you that I went to school here. Feels like not a long time ago, and yet I'm putting on glasses to read my remarks, so it's been a little while. I will start by reiterating what my brother said. It means the world that you're all here, so thank you for being here. The speakers, Sister Margaret, Cynthia, my brother, Milton. It's really wonderful to hear your words. I'm going to talk about words, I guess, a bit from my brief homily here before our silent meeting together. Being here, for me, is about being at Friends, where my mother worked, touched so many. It's where I spent 13 years. My dad was talking to me about this. I think the last time I sat or spoke at this podium was when I graduated from high school 10 years ago, so that feels... Anyway, it really means a lot. It was a school, it's a place that's meaningful to me. There are still teachers in the audience, some whom I sort of remember, like Phil Schwartz, some who are still here that I just were really important for me. I'm using note cards today sort of as an homage to Mr. Schwartz, who was my Latin and Greek teacher. And as well, I guess, because I'm contrarian. But the first thing I want to talk about are sort of words. So I thought about the word eulogy, and I say this without being pedantic. It has Greek origins from the word for good and the word for the word. And so I've been thinking a lot about how to say enough good words about my mother. I think the preceding speakers have really said a lot. So I'm not going to delve too deeply in that. I'll just share with you that I think a lot about words because of my parents, where I was educated, and where I've had the sort of good fortune to read and explore things. The other word I want to talk about is lachrymose. It means tearful. We can sort of say these good words sometimes through tears. I'll do my best, and that's what the note cards are here for, so I can stay on track. But yeah, I think this is just a lot about words today. And in the days and months before my mother's death, there were sort of two expressions and two sets of words that I heard of sort of solidarity or grief or love or condolence that I want to talk about. The first one is holding her in the light. I think anyone who's been at this school and this place has used or is familiar with. We've talked about my mother's light today a little bit. And the second is may her memory be a blessing. This is also something that was said to me. I thought a lot about what those words sort of meant. I'll start with the first one. I'll say that these words were really nice. They also sort of added to my sadness a little bit. I know you didn't mean it that way when you said it, but I would say that the first one, when I think about light, I think about heat and like how close I can be to this light. And you want me to hold this, but it's hot and it burns. It's hard for me to hold this light, and it hurts. And yet it's really important, and I'm grateful for everyone. And we're sort of holding my mother in the light here. We're bathed in the light as it comes through these windows. It's really wonderful. Each person has a capacity to illuminate, my mother in particular. And so I know we're going to have a silent meeting, but I'll just pause for a second so we can be together in that light. The second one I heard from family and friends and loved ones is, may her memory be a blessing. I had a hard time with that one too. I recognize the sentiment. It's wonderful. Were they trying to say one memory? Because there are so many memories, and some of them are wonderful. I'll confess to you that some of the more recent ones, Andrew alluded to Mom sort of bearing up under cancer this last year, were not a blessing. It's like the opposite. So that was sort of hard for me to figure out how to navigate this variety of memories. They are wonderful memories. The sound my mother made when she met her grandchildren, all the other things that are just really wonderful. But some of those memories are hard. So I know I'm blessed, although this blessing can be heavy, to kind of allude to another meaning of that word light I was talking about earlier on. It's hard sometimes. So I've thought a lot about that. Thanks. So soon we're going to have a silent meeting, and we're going to stand individually and say wonderful things about my mother. And I'm, like I said in the beginning, thank you. It means a lot for all of us, this whole sort of family that we have here together. But before we go and do that, there's a group exercise I want to do with you all. So Andrew warned you that sometimes these group exercises are inflicted upon us. And so I have a two-part request for the audience. So let me just finish the request, and then we can do it together. Whoever has experienced and feels my mother's light and feels blessed by those memories, I'd like you to stand and say something joyful to the person to your right or left. So please stand and fill this space with joy and noise, because we're going to be quiet and talk. So say something joyful to your neighbor. Great. So wind it down, but this is excellent. All right, thanks everyone. Thank you. I hope it's a reminder of the wonderful light and all the aspects of that word and what that means to all of us, and the memories and how they can be a blessing. And they're still hard for me sometimes, but they're on balance just wonderful. And I wish that we can all enjoy the blessing of my mother, Ann Sullivan's light, for all the days of all of our lives.
As David said, now we'll move into memorial meeting for worship. And I'd like to share a few words about meeting, since I'm guessing many of you have never attended one before, and might benefit from just a little bit of instruction. The Religious Society of Friends holds as the basis of its faith the belief that God endows every human being with a measure of the divine spirit. Friends' manner of worship is an outgrowth of this belief. As Quaker meetings or memorials are based on silence, but it is a silence of waiting and expectancy. The silence provides a space for people to separate themselves from the events of the day, the daily life, and in the case of a memorial, to remember. Any individual who feels moved to speak, to offer a prayer or insight that has come out of the silence is encouraged to do so. Please, however, do not speak immediately after another message. Allow a brief period of silence. A brief message is often preferable to a long message. Those who keep silence, as well as those who speak, contribute equally to the meeting. The meeting is closed with handshakes, which I will initiate at what feels like an appropriate moment. And after our meeting, we'll continue our celebration of Ann's life in the common room with the reception, and the family hopes that you'll stay and join them. Thank you.
As Andrea Clardy, a writer, once said, "A friend is someone who knows the song in your heart and can sing it back to you when you have forgotten the words." That was Ann Sullivan to me. We had an amazing collaboration starting in 1979 and continuing through our partnership in our coaching consulting business, Sullivan Stein Leadership Development. I was introduced to Ann on day one when I started at Friends Seminary. She was assigned to be my mentor throughout the year. At the end of week one, she said, "Let's go to the corner to Joe Jr.'s for lunch." Though she was amazed that I ordered a hamburger, French fries, and a chocolate milkshake, that lunch cemented our colleagueship and friendship for the next 25 years. As you've heard, Ann had many positions at Friends. In each one, she was a star, thoroughly understanding the needs of children, parents, and faculty. She was smart and strategic, with a focus on learning, on service, and on the importance of community. Following Friends Seminary's emphasis on looking for what is special in each individual, Ann always assumed the best in others. It was no surprise that the School of the Holy Child recognized her many talents and made her head of school. As a leader, Ann was inspired and skilled, providing wise and steady counsel, and always so generous with her time. She was empathetic. She weathered the difficult times with grace and calm, and could always find countless ways to celebrate the good times. I always looked forward to going to conferences with Ann. We learned a lot, but had free time for tennis and walks and good conversations to catch up on each other's lives, our work, our families, and our interests. At one National Association of Independent Schools conference in Boston, we looked over the program and found that this year's speakers were not very informative, so we went shopping. Only to be caught on our return by Joyce McCrae, the then head of school, with our bursting shopping bags. Ann's friendship was powerful. She led, she entertained, she enjoyed all the culture of New York and surrounding areas. She traveled. She dressed impeccably with a flair all her own. She had pals around the world. I think of all she did, and throughout, her kindness shone. I tried to learn from that, and I did this from the earliest days of our friendship and will continue to learn from her example for many years to come. I'd like to end with an unpublished poem by Marion Cuomo, the latter part which reminded me of Anne. There are those who pass like ships in the night, who met for a moment and sail out of sight, with never a backward glance of regret. Those we know briefly, then quietly forget. And then there are those, like Anne, who sail together through quiet waters and stormy weather, helping each other through joy and through strife. And they are the ones who give meaning to life. Anne, you have given meaning to so many. Thank you for being my colleague and friend.
When Dick and Ann first arrived on Cranberry Island more than 40 years ago, I think, some random conversation we discovered that we had the same birthday. And I got to reminiscing about when I was a child on this island, and the community was very small. My parents would make a birthday party for me, and they would invite some of their adult friends and the few other children that were on the island. And my father would make up these wonderful, silly games that came out of his very elaborate imagination. And it was Anne, of course, who said, "Oh, we should do that again." And that first summer, when August 24th rolled around, we had a birthday party as if we were kids, played silly games. But that then evolved into celebrating our shared birthday together virtually every summer since, with my wife Cindy, with my family when they were there, with Dick, with our good friends Jim and Sam. And for me, it became a kind of landmark in time to know that near the end of the summer, I would have my birthday. My parents are long gone, many, many years, but I would have my birthday with Anne, with family. And it became a ritual, an important ritual. Last summer, of course, we made a very special trip back to the island. It was then my 75th birthday. We had planned, earnestly hoping that one more time, share that with Anne. That was not to be. But she will always be with me, as she will always be with all of you in various ways, especially.
My husband, Paul Supton, who taught here with Anne, and loved dearly all of you. Anne was a friend in his life like he has few of, and I know that his feelings for her went very, very deep of all that he shared and the ways that she challenged him, which is a really daunting thing to do. But I just wanted to say on his behalf and on our behalf, and my daughter Anna, who Anne gave special love to, that we feel very grateful for all of you, and that Paul feels very grateful for his launch at Friends and the amazing people that he met here and all of the time we were able to spend with all of you on Cranberry.
Like so many of us here today, Anne had incredible impact and positive influence over my education, my career, and the person that I am now. I'm not capable of articulating that nearly as concisely or beautifully as our dedicated speakers, so I'm not going to try. I just wanted to share something that Anne did that I really liked. It makes me sad that I will never sit on my squeaky 70s 3-speed bicycle that I may have outgrown and hear Anne come around the corner with exciting news or likely an invite to something and say, "Yoo-hoo!" I'm sad that I'll never hear that again.
I want to thank Dick, David, Andrew, Erica, Adi, and their families for taking such great care of Ann this year and of all of us, keeping in touch with us, and telling us what was happening, and letting us be part of this year. It was a gift to all of us and to her, which I know appreciated. You are a model for all of us. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ellen Schaefer, and we too have known the Sullivans for decades. And we're here bathing in the reflected glow and blessing of Ann. But there's one area that hasn't been mentioned that Ann did not have total control over. It was Dick, the fanatic Yankees and Knicks fan. One example, they sometimes stayed at our house on the mainland before they could get to their house on Cranberry. They happened to overlap with our daughter's prospective in-laws who had come from Boston to look over the rehearsal dinner place, to look over things. We did not know the Colemans very well, but they are the quintessential, not uptight, but very conservative Bostonians. There was a game on between the Knicks and the Celtics. Ann and I were lurking by the sink, hoping that the Knicks won because Dick has been known to pound the television. I mean, he is not the well-behaved professional doctor we know and love. Luckily, the Knicks won, and so Ann and I breathed a sigh of relief. But in every other area, it's all been wonderful.
Hello, everyone. Ellen behind me referenced tennis at these heads of school conferences, which Bo and Ellen and I, many of my colleagues here, used to attend. And my wife, Kristen, and I first got to know Dick and Ann on the tennis court at these conferences. And you learn a lot about a person and a couple playing tennis with them or against them. And, looking at Dick and remembering Ann, they are of very disparate sizes. And you would think that Dick would cover 2/3 of the court, 3/4 of the court, and Ann would sort of catch, a few shots here and there. Wasn't the case. Ann, as we all know, was a dynamo, indefatigable, boundless energy. And I think of those qualities certainly in evidence on the court, covering for her husband on most games. But clearly she carried those into her family life and into her school and professional life. When I first met Ann, I was head of school in a place called Brooklyn, just across the way. And Ann had started at Holy Child the year before I began at my school in Brooklyn. And when I first met Ann at the New York State Heads Association, I found her a tad officious, maybe a little bit bossy. And then I realized, kind of like my older sister, but I realized over time that, as Milton alluded to, she had that quality of giving advice and counsel that you didn't want to hear, but you knew in your heart and your head that it was absolutely the right advice. And she gave it in such a determined, forceful way that you had to listen and you had to act on it. And I think it was just brilliant that she and Ellen then founded this executive coaching firm in her sort of retirement years because she was so good at giving that kind of advice. And she gave it to me, both personally and professionally, over the years, and I will miss it dearly.
I just wanted to take a moment to thank David for having us all stand up and have that great memory and great moment. Like David and Ellen, all of us here, we all experienced Ann, but the thing that I remember, and I was sharing, no matter how crazy the moment was that you were asking advice from her, the first thing she would do is she would laugh. And I just would like all of us to remember that glorious smile and laugh. I mean, you would tell her a parent has threatened a lawsuit, the school's going to go under, the children have been maimed in a field trip. And first, Ann Sullivan would laugh at the craziness of life. And she would look up at me and she'd say, "Isn't life crazy, Matthew?" And she would laugh. And all of your worry and fear and would kind of melt. And you'd go, "Oh my God, Ann, what should I do?" And then she would get into some really good advice. But at first, she would always make sure you laughed at the craziness of life. She never let it bring her down or bring us down. So thank you for that from her, and thank you for giving me that moment to remember that glorious smile and that laughter of hers.
In my early days teaching at Friends, this is maybe in the 80s, the school was smaller, and I taught all the United States history class, and Ann taught all the American literature class. And we talked a lot about our work together, the material we were doing, and tried to coordinate somewhat. So I saw very much the love that she had for literature and for American literature in particular. I certainly learned from her in ways that improved my teaching as we collaborated. But we were also advisors to the 11th grade. And there were others as well, but because we taught them all, we were sort of at the heart of it. And of course, Ann was always at the heart of things. And what people have talked about, her enormous energy, her sense of community, just her vitality, just led her to just spring forth with all these ideas. We had field day, we had that the juniors organized, we had the junior essay, we had one event after the other that brought the school together, that gave an enormous amount of energy and vitality to the community. And she was always leading in that, and I was helping her with that. I remember one year, and there may be people here who were in that class, where the 11th graders just couldn't come to consensus about what was going to happen on field day and how they were going to plan it. And I was getting frustrated, but I didn't know what to say. And Ann just said, "I'll just tell the upper school that this year we're not going to do field day." And bang, everything just took off. They jumped into it, and of course we had another field day. So she just kind of permeated her spirit just permeated the whole community and motivated people to make the community more vital, more vibrant, more alive. And it was a blessing to all of us.
And I wanted to take off on that word crazy that was mentioned a minute ago. So we've been friends with the Sullivans. Here's our family. And just as a tangent off of some of the values we talked about, I have a million stories, experiences, just a couple that stuck out of my mind as lessons. Students say, we'd get together with them and we'd come up with an idea or a suggestion. I remember thinking, man, that's crazy. And saying, that's unrealistic, it's impractical. I don't even know how you can. And it probably took me 20 years of giving that back to, but to sink in on. That's how people are driven to overachieve, supersede. Now, I never give that lecture anymore. I certainly learned that from Ann a long time ago. I'll never forget that one, as well as a second one, which is kind of shockingly frank here. But so one day, Ann and Dick were doing something crazy, which was they were something like flying back from Paris in the afternoon to JFK at 2 o'clock, and then having a dinner party at 7 o'clock in their place. And that wasn't just once. I mean, this happened periodically. So I remember my wife saying to Ann one time, "Ann, why are you so compulsive to do this? Isn't that kind of crazy?" Her reply was, "The way I see it is do everything you can, and then you're dead." Can you think of how many people do we meet in our lives who live their values till their very last? As in,
This is just a little bit of history on the other side and how this wonderful legacy almost never happened. I'll take you back. Dick and I met in 2nd and 3rd grade. Dick's a lot taller than I, but I'm a year older, 8 months older. In fourth grade, we met each other again, rejoined in the same Cub Den, what do they call it? Cub Scout Den group. And we've been friends ever since. As some of you know, I studied to be a Catholic priest in a seminary, and in fact, I was ordained a priest. And the very first wedding I witnessed was Ann and Dick Sullivan, June 8th, 1968. But I want to take you back to a night almost 3 years before that. Pope Paul VI, on October the 4th, 1965, visited New York, and we were all bussed down to St. Patrick's Cathedral from the seminary for the Mass, and then we were given the day off, the rest of that day, the night, and part of the next day. In those days, that was like parole. So I called Dick and I said, Dick, I've got the night off. You want to go out for a few cold ones? I've got all these papers to do. I've got to do well. Yeah, let's go out for a few cold ones. Well, a few cold ones turned into more than a few cold ones, and the night got later. The next morning, Dick's mom peeked through the door, expecting to see a student hard at work. No, he was still asleep. She went into a rage. What are you doing? You're supposed to be studying. Get those papers done. You've got to do well to get into a good doctoral program. Wait a minute. You have a date tonight? You're not going out on that date. You're absolutely not going out. You've got to get these papers done. And Dick said, as any of us who have been in that moment, okay, I won't go. I never met the woman. I don't even know her name. Well, as any of you or us who have been in that position before, as the day goes on, you collect your thoughts and you say, what was I thinking? Of course I'm going out. And of course he did go out. And that night he met Anne Marie Finneran. And their lives were never the same. Our lives were never the same since then.
Hi, my name is Susan LeMay. I was at this school for 2 years. I found it fascinating to have the teachers that I had, especially Paul Supton and Ann Sullivan for English, both of them. But when I left to go to the High School of Art and Design. I didn't take good notes because I doodled over them when I was supposed to be taking notes in English. I remember Anne assigning us something that will always stay with me. And if anybody else here was assigned the same thing, I want you to raise your hand, was to write a poem called I Am What I Eat. Anybody here from my classes? No? Okay. She was a joy to write for because I actually do remember feeling like I wanted her to know these aspects of how, I think the first line was, if I am what I eat, then I eat what I am, said the madman in tears in the loudest cry that he had made in all his 21 years. Something like that. But just to feel so at home with someone and want to write anything that could come into my mind that I thought she could respond to. But I remember when I told her that I was going to be going to the High School of Art and Design, and she was so excited for me because she knew that I used to doodle on my English notes. And I mean, it was a lovely thing to see her and Paul Supton as friends in the school. And when I got home, my last report card, I think, from Paul Supton's English class was spelling genuinely innovative. So that's my great send-off from the two of them. So I'm glad to meet you guys finally.
Hello, I am Judy Webster, a very long-time friend of Ann and Dick's. And I met Ann and Dick in another chapter of their life and in Iowa City, Iowa, when Ann and I were both teachers at the lab schools that belonged to the University of Iowa at that time. And I just know Ann's hospitality and generosity as spirit were unparalleled. From the very first time that Ann and Dick invited my husband and I to dinner, and it was a late night dinner, and I think you served Sully burgers, right, which I've come to replicate. It was magnificent, and this is through many Christmas Eves, really through many Easter and Easter egg hunts, through many fall baking sessions, through many stays in your home, both long and short. Ann will always be the benchmark, Dick, along with you and your children. Now, I do know that Ann Sullivan, probably inadvertently along the way, has served many angels, and I feel that now they are welcoming her home. Thank you.
Hi, Ann was my advisor junior year and my teacher for many years and my friend. I had an amazing love of language, and I think between her and Phil, I was doomed. I think they tag teamed me and I didn't even know it. But I would like to share two examples of how Ann will live on beyond these walls. One is when I went to college. I figured I'd be an English major, because what else would you be coming out of Friends Seminary? But I didn't really like the offering. So what did I like? I liked women's studies. They didn't have a women's studies major. I came back, I spoke with Ann, we brainstormed, I went back to school, I created my own major. It was called Language, Literature, and Gender, go figure. A couple years later, they actually used that as the basis for what is now officially a women's studies major. So got that piece. Fast forward 10 years, because I also only graduated 10 years ago. My daughter, it was time for her to choose a high school, and Friends was in the mix. And I love it, but you have to weigh all your options, and I wasn't really sure. And I figured, okay, if the English department legacy and love of learning is still now what it was then this is absolutely the right choice. And so she came, and it absolutely was the right choice. This year, first semester, she had a teacher, I'm not sure she's here, but was certainly in the tradition of both Phil and Ann, so both scary and loving at the same time. She's here, I love you too, but my daughter came home and she was just terrified. I don't know what to do. I don't know what she's looking for. And I said, well, I think I might be able to help you with that. I had this teacher, she had an absolute love of words, and that tradition has stayed intact. And I will always remember my junior year when we read Walden, and she would have us circle the word and talk about the word over and over again, and that word was dear.
So I was one of Ann Sullivan's first students here at Friends, and I cannot tell you how much I loved her. I was not a very good student, and then I had Ann, and Ann taught me how to write. She taught me how to interpret literature. She taught me how to just be a human and how to be a good friend, and she was so important in my life. And I told her so many personal things that were going on with me and my boyfriend, and she supported me. She never judged me. She helped me. And I actually had dinner with her recently. I don't know if you knew that. I'm not sure if she was sick, but we went out to this Mexican restaurant called Santa Fe, New York, and we had dinner with her and another one of my friends, and I brought my daughter. She got to meet her, and she will always be my home.
I had the misfortune of, as a student, not having Ann as a teacher, having left Friends too early for that. But the great fortune, years later, of coming back to Friends as a parent and a board member and serving with Ann for quite some time. And our work together was inspiring, sometimes very difficult. She performed amazing services for us on committees and all the love and wisdom she showed. But the thing that I most take away from our meetings together, we did a lot of very difficult things as a board, and many board members, most of them, myself included, had our general perspectives on things. This person would be conciliatory, that person might be more aggressive on certain issues. And as clerk for a period responsible for leading the discussions, when we would get bogged down, there was something I would do to really jumpstart the discussion. And I would look over at Ann and I would say, Ann, I would love to know your thoughts. In fact, in the tradition, I would say, Ann Sullivan, I would love to know your thoughts. And without fail, she would come up with something that was original. I had no idea which way she was going to take the conversation, but very, very often she would provide the jolt that we needed to move as a board. And I'm grateful for that, and I loved every minute of it.
I first came to Friends Seminary in September of 1970 as a bewildered, confused, scared Puerto Rican Cuban kid from East Harlem. I was first put under sort of the teachings of Paul Supton, who was incredible. And eventually, he passed me on to Ann Sullivan when she started here. As I've thought about my long relationship and the importance of Ann Sullivan to me, clearly she taught me writing skills, not speaking skills, but writing skills. But as I reflect in the spirit of what it means to be part of a Quaker school and a Quaker education, where each of us has a unique light within us, Ann Sullivan truly helped me find my light. And she contributed to that light. And I feel it now, and I will carry it with me forever. To the Sullivan family, thank you for how you did share with us what Ann was going through her last days. I'm eternally grateful for that as well.
Ann Sullivan was a friend of my husband, John, and I, as was Dick, for many years. We too met in 1968 in Iowa City, and I wanted to just take a minute to think about Ann in the light of the saying, food is love. We could look at that literally, the way she might parse this out, and I think back to the first dinner that Ann cooked for us in their first apartment in New York, and it was chicken cherries jubilee. Well, this was like 70. Ann was a foodie before there was the word foodie. And that's something that I think so many of us share, and it's so striking how many people know Ann and Dick for so many years. But I just want to end with thinking about food is love figuratively, because it's very clear that one of the things that was the essence of Ann was feeding people ideas and words. And I want to thank the family for giving us the opportunity to share that today.
We all find ourselves in a bastion of friendship here. As an institution of excellence, sitting in this row are 6 people who have been close friends for as long as I can remember. 4 of us started at a bank together in the training program 42 years ago. We've traveled the world together. Any one of them can have my kids, my grandchildren, care for them, and vice versa. They're life friends. We had this bank in common. But as time developed, we crossed paths with some other people who became life friends. And Ann were only two people These are people who are special in our whole life. We love the idea of life friends, and we love Dick and Ann.
My name is Tom Hadlock, and I feel I'm lucky to even be in here. I'm at the last row, and I was lucky to get space. So many wonderful people have come to honor Ann. And I just want to say a couple of things that most of you can't say, but been saying so many other good things. What I want to say is that with the exception of maybe 2 or 3 people or 4 here, I've known Ann as long as anybody after Dick first met her. And I'm very proud of that. And I can say that we met many times with Ann, not too many, but enough to know her pretty well at a place called the Cobblestone up in Purchase, New York, when we were young adults. Dick and I and another gentleman, Al, and I spoke earlier. And I want to say that she is the real McCoy. As I saw Ann then, she was, and many times thereafter, she never, in a sense, never changed. And some people do, and not always for the best, but maybe she was even better than I first saw her. She was smart, she was intelligent, she was fun, she was attractive. She was everything that I think made Dick very happy that he got to meet her and then marry her. So I feel honored to know her for so many years. I guess it's about 60 years. And I'm proud of that. And I'm honored to say that. And I want to say, may she rest in peace. She was a lovely, lovely lady.
I just want to say that it feels really good to be in this meeting house today. I'm class of 1985. When students ask me about how I became a writer, Friends Seminary is at the top of that memory, that story. It was Ed Randolph who turned me into a poet. And it was John Byrne who introduced me to Down These Mean Streets by Perry Thomas, Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. And I don't know what we were doing reading Canterbury Tales freshman year, but we were. But it took me a while to remember that 11th grade English, I think it was American Lit, and Ann assigned a short novel called Seize the Day. And that has since been one of my favorite books of all time. She instilled a love of the short novel. And she also taught The Spy Who Came In From the Cold by John le Carré. And we had to write a story modeled after The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. I knew nothing about prose writing at the time. And my story was filled with dialogue. And it took place in East Harlem, where I was raised. And I forget the grade that she gave me. I don't even know if she gave me a grade. But at some point she said, you should take up playwriting. And I just want to report to the family that 40 years later, I've taken her advice, So
I also was a member of the class of 1975. And when I think of the gift and the power of what Ann gave us as a teacher, that 50 years later, so many of my classmates found it important to be here and to say thank you for the gift that she gave us. I think she gave me different advice than you because I became an accounting major, and I think she probably said, English, not so much, but she was an extraordinary figure, and we are celebrating our 50th reunion, and every 5 years, Ann, who was the moral compass for my class, would come and would bring Dick to the reunion, and she will be here in spirit this May. And Dick, I hope you join. You're an honorary member of the class of 75.
So I'm sorry over there, but I think I was Ann Sullivan's first student. I was really fortunate to be at Friends in the early 70s when you didn't have to take math or English, as I discovered after 10th grade, if you didn't want to, which I most certainly did not want to. And so I doubled up in English every semester after that, and every semester with Ann Sullivan, from The Awakening to Solzhenitsyn to Madame Bovary. Ann was I don't think we even really spoke about being feminists then, but she instilled in me a strength to stop being the shy, kind of awkward student that I was,
And I think one of the greatest gifts Anne gave, with all her grace and all her humor and all those things I got to know even better as when we reconnected as when I was an adult, was that she took her students seriously. Like someone said over there, she nursed me through 2 heartbreaks when I was 16, when I was also young for my grade. The loss of the breakup with my first boyfriend, and the loss of George McGovern, which devastated me. And Anne let me take off because I was campaigning avidly the last couple of days of the campaign, and then chastised the kid who said to me when I came in dressed, well, then it was unusual, all in black with my McGovern Shriver necklace on. And the kid said, Lisa, he lost. And she said, you stop that. She was out there doing this. And she empowered us by taking us seriously. And that was a real gift.
So I'm old enough not to have been Ann's first student, or any for that matter, but several people have alluded to meeting Dick and meeting Ann in Iowa City, and I was lucky to have been one of those. And I remember when Ann arrived in Iowa City, and we were all very curious as to what Dick's girlfriend would be like. And she arrived, and she had with her the most wonderful thing. She had 2 wing chairs that she brought with her to Iowa City. And I was a kid from the East, but I'd never seen a wing chair. And I thought this was really wonderful. And I mention this because one of the things about Ann that no one has yet mentioned was that throughout her life, she was always an incredibly stylish person. The way she dressed, the way she was groomed, Ann was always attractive and put together. And not in any superficial way, but you'd look at Ann and you'd think, wow. And there's a company in Freeport, Maine that has grown very, very large by selling clothing and shoes and outdoor equipment that Ann always really emulated effortlessly. I mean, one of the wonderful things about Ann, I thought, throughout her life, was at any given point, she could have modeled for L.L. Bean. And the most wonderful thing about it, we've heard a lot about the advice that Ann has given people and what a wonderful teacher she was. And she taught all of us. I think we can say that she taught everybody in this room today. And one of the things that we all valued about her most was that there was nothing superficial about Ann, but that she emulated qualities to which we all aspire: kindness, service, compassion, an intense sense of humor, and just, she was a wonderful person to know and to be with.
I was not a student of Ann's, but maybe I was for a brief moment in time as her neighbor. Sullivans and Rita and I lived across the street from each other in Brooklyn, St. John's Place. And when our daughter Emma was born, he was one of the first people that rang our doorbell and filled the house with her smile of excitement for us. Like, oh my God, he's here. I got a present for you. Here, pet the bunny. Read from this book, and she'll like reading. And I was fascinated by that. I was an exhibit designer for children's museums. And the book, as you know, has texture in it. Sheep, there was like a texture of wool in there. Cow, a texture of leather. And as a children's museum designer, I was very aware of how a minimum of text is better than a word more. And whenever there was like text discussions in the exhibit meetings, it was like Ann was sitting on my shoulder. Remember, pet the bunny, texture, add texture to your design. And yes, our daughter loves reading.
So I'll try to be brief but resolute in my explanation of how Ann impacted my life. I knew her for a relatively brief 5 years as a child, and growing up in the 80s in Alphabet City, not so far from here, saw a lot of things that I didn't want to see, but I wasn't afraid of that. I can tell you that transitioning into a private school environment from a public school environment was terrifying. And one of the first people I met was Ann Sullivan. She spoke to me with a mix of calm, professionalism, and motherly love. She was my admissions counselor and my friend and my guidance counselor, my mentor for the 5 years I was here. Her impact on my life and my trajectory, not so unlike Mr. Sip, was incredible. And there are numbers all around us, right? The number of people that she impacted, the students that she had here, the number of years that she spent at Friends, the 32 years since I spoke last in this room, the age of the child next to me who has no idea the impact that Ann had on his life just yet. But there is no number that can measure the size of Ann's heart.
My name is Janet, and I represent days back in high school. We're at Good Counsel Academy. Can't remember. I've been racking my brain, trying to remember the first time I met Ann. But all I can say is that Ann has touched so much of my life from those days at Good Counsel. She got me my first job at Bonwit Teller, which then led me to, later on in life, to a very successful career, the buyer for Macy's. I have 2 daughters. I don't think we ever really talked about trying to match them up with David and Andrew. But I think it was in the back of both of our minds. We have so many memories, and quite frankly, it just rocked me to my core that Ann had to suffer through cancer and that I had to lose the physicality of our friendship. But I have to say that the memories that I have, that I share with my family, they have now given me such comfort, and I thank Ann for being such a long time and dear friend to me.
I'm Dennis Wenger. My wife Kathy is here, and we're from San Diego, California. I did want to mention, however, I'm happy to hear that there are Iowa City people here because this is where we met them. My wife was getting a master's degree, and I was in the orthopedic surgery program. And this rather skillful social family somehow met up with us there 45 years ago, and we've remained friends ever since. I have to go back a little bit earlier to someone that says when you first meet Ann, especially if you're a Midwesterner, this country sort of has coastal issues. And the New Yorker item of where you fly over is Iowa, where I trained, and Ohio, where I grew up. So when we see people like Ann coming into your culture, who seems to know everything, wear beautiful clothes, and occasionally sounds like she wants to tell you that she knows everything, you're just a little bit suspicious. But because of the friendship, we started visiting the Sullivans, and they came to see us, and we went to Cranberry Island. And we found that we in the Midwest were the losers who didn't really know about everything, and that you can live a full cultured life and be a good person, care for other people, not be selfish, even though in the Midwest you would sort of sound like maybe you were. So I think international ambassadorships and traveling from here to there, I hope our country picks people like Ann when they send them to Poland or wherever else they're to serve, because their personalities, the way they live their life, they can extend it to other people and make you understand there are many ways to be a happy person. And there are very, very few people in this world like Ann Sullivan. Thank you, family.
I want to start by thanking Friends Seminary for being an incredible school with an incredible mission that held this woman so close for so many years, that helped her grow into who she became, a place where when I came here to interview with Ann in the 90s between David and Andrew's graduations, it was raining, a place where there was a homeless shelter in the gym at night. As a young person, to see a school that was so filled with a joy of learning, of books that we've learned about today. So I really want to thank Friends for giving Ann wings. And I got to be with her as she was development person, had been admissions person, had been English teacher, before she became a college counseling person, and before she became a head of school. And what I want to say, her humility and her grace, her ability to continue to learn and to ask for help and advice, even from young people, younger than her. So yes, she was my mentor. She was like a mother. She was so many things to me, but she had grace and humility, and she was always a student and voraciously learning from all of you, and especially from the great values of Friends Seminary. And she was so happy to have her boys live and grow up here, and to have Dick support that and support all of us taking up too much of her time. So thank you.
I'm sorry we need to transition into the reception. I apologize to those who weren't able to speak. We could probably sit here all night and hear wonderful memories about Ann, but we do need to move forward. The family has a dinner later tonight together. We don't want them to be late for that. So with all due respect, we will transition into the common room and continue thinking and talking and remembering Ann. Thank you so much.